Tennessee baseball sweeps number one Ole Miss in Oxford. It's time to start having the conversation that this Tennessee baseball team is really, really good. Plus, Tennessee football held spring practice, a big recruiting day over on Saturday. We'll get some comments from Alex Golesh on what he had to say. All that and more coming up here on a Monday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Eric Kane. Welcome into another week of Locked On Vols. And of course, it's brought to you by Stat Hero, reshaping the way that you play fantasy sports. Dozens of house-based games to play daily. No sharks, no funky props. Just your skill versus the lineups that you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/locked on. We got a lot to get into today. Of course, it's been a fun sports weekend. It would have been better if Tennessee basketball was still in the tournament, of course. But you had the ending of the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight was completed. Now you have a Final Four. And on one side of the bracket, you're getting a rematch of two arch rivals in Duke and North Carolina. The other side, well, it's more chalk in Kansas versus Villanova, of course. But that's kind of where we stand entering the new week in terms of the basketball tournament. But you know, Tennessee baseball put forth just a ton of really, really good ABs, some really, really good outings on the mound. Sweeps number one Ole Miss. That's where we're going to start here today, and it was a whole lot of fun. I'm your host, Eric Kane, here on Locked On Vols. You found this podcast at _Kaner on Twitter, at Locked On Vols, and as always, Twitter Tuesday is coming up tomorrow, so get me in your tweets, your questions, your comments, your concerns at _Kaner, at Locked On Vols. We'll take them all day long. We'll record coming up later tonight. All right, so Tennessee, a game one victory Friday night. It was 12-1. Game two victory Saturday night. It was 10-3, and game three victory Sunday evening, a final of 4-3. Tennessee sweeps number one Ole Miss, arguably considered the best team in the country. And Tennessee actually had a first place, not just a first place vote, was voted first place in one of the polls. Of course, there's about 15 different baseball polls. It's a little ridiculous. But coming off the weekend, no doubt about it, I think Virginia would have a conversation to be in here as well. Tennessee baseball should be the number one team across the board, depending on whatever poll you look at. So far on the season, it is 23-1. It is undefeated in SEC play, the first or the best start in SEC play in about 4 decades. Tennessee baseball has pop in that lineup. It's got diversity in that lineup. It's got a lot of options in that lineup. It's got really, really good arms in the starting rotation, spearheaded by 2 true freshmen. And it's got a really good bullpen. Oh, yeah, and its best pitcher arguably is very, very close, was actually available for games 2 and games 3 of this series in Blade Tidwell. So this Tennessee baseball team's rolling, no doubt about it. And what you were able to accomplish against Ole Miss, I don't know how many of you guys listen to the Diamond Vols podcast that Ben McKee and myself do. So you guys, if you listen to that show, you've already heard this. But that Ole Miss pitching ERA wasn't very good. It's been very underwhelming so far this year. But that lineup is stacked. That lineup can hit. That lineup travels. And what Tennessee's pitchers were able to do this weekend was truly incredible. Let's go first to Friday. Look at Chase Burns. He continues just to be incredible. 7 innings pitched for the true freshman, surrendered 1 earned run off 2 hits, 11 strikeouts, no walks through 106 pitches. Saturday was Chase Dolander's best day in a volunteer uniform. The sophomore transfer from Georgia Tech. He went 6 innings and a third, surrendered no runs, gave up 3 hits, 10 strikeouts, 1 walk, 100 pitches, 80 of which were in the strike zone. And then let's go to Sunday. Drew Beam, 7 innings and a third, 1 run, 3 hits, 6 strikeouts, no walks on 90 pitches. Tennessee's starting pitchers will give you a chance to win every single ball game. Quickly, we'll recap the weekend. It was Friday. Chase Burns was the highlight. 12-1 was the score. Tennessee went up 6-0 in the second inning, highlighted by 2 home runs from Jared Dickey. That was kind of the show there. On Saturday, let's take a brief intermission real quick, shall we? After the game on Friday night, you had a redshirt freshman, Dylan DeLucia, who's a pitcher for Ole Miss. He came in and stopped the bleeding, though he gave up 6 earned runs as well for Ole Miss. And he was quoted in saying this Friday night after the game: "We took them lightly. It won't happen again. We're going to win tomorrow. I'll tell you that." It's one of those things where they play in a small field. We have a bigger field, so we thought we could throw it in on them. it didn't work out. We missed some spots, and that's why they ended up hitting the homers. Tomorrow will be better. Well, Saturday's final score, Tennessee 10, Ole Miss 3. Tennessee jumped out 2 runs in the first inning, a run in the second inning, 3 runs in the fourth inning, 2 runs in the fifth inning, 2 runs in the eighth inning before Ole Miss finally salvaged that game, scoring 2 in the eighth and 1 in the ninth, but it was still 10-3. Tennessee pounded out 10 runs on 17 hits in that ball game, where a redshirt freshman, Dylan DeLucia, came out and guaranteed a win. Boy, how embarrassing. How freaking embarrassing. Anytime a younger player wants to open his mouth, typically you tell him to shut the hell up to begin with. But you come out and you guarantee a win against a team that just beat you up 12-1. Boy, you might want to shut the hell up next time. That was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. And then Sunday, Tennessee trying to finish things off. Again, 4-3, the final score. Tennessee, it was zeros across the scoreboard through 3. Tennessee scored 3 in the fourth, added 1 on for good measure in the sixth. It was a 3-run home run from the catcher for Ole Miss, Hayden Dunhurst, that brought it within a 1-run game. That 3-run shot was off Camden Sewell, but Redmond Wash came in, slammed the door shut, pitched the final inning in a third, surrendered 2 hits, no runs, 5 strikeouts across 8 batters. He threw 28 pitches, and that is the formula for Tennessee winning at number 1 Oxford in sweeping fashion. Tennessee now 23-1 on the year, 6-0. Ole Miss falling to 16 and what is that, 7? 16-7, 2-4 in Southeastern Conference play. No doubt about it, Tennessee absolutely deserves to be the number 1 team in the country. Doesn't matter what poll you look at. Doesn't matter what poll you look at. Tennessee needs to be the number 1 team in the country. And again, it's very early in SEC play, but these last 2 weekends, Ole Miss and the weekend coming up against Vanderbilt, it's going to be very telling to figure out what this Tennessee baseball team's all about, okay? And now that South Carolina sweep last weekend to begin SEC play is looking a whole lot better. South Carolina gave Vanderbilt all it could handle this past weekend. It really did, win in a couple games. So Tennessee baseball, it's obviously not perfect. Don't get me wrong. It never will be perfect. But it's Tony Vitello is building the juggernaut here for sure. One note from from Sunday's game, Jared Dickey left the game in, I want to say, the 4th inning. Let's see here. He left the game in the 5th inning after popping out the left field. He limped back to the dugout and then into the tunnel with UT's trainers. Dickey was seen on crutches following the game. Tony Vitello told Ben McKee of VolQuest in postgame that he was dealing with with an undisclosed injury. So interesting there. We'll have to see exactly what Jared Dickey will do moving forward. But boy, Tennessee baseball, what a weekend in Oxford. If you're not following my good buddy Ben McKee, who comes on the show all the time, you need to start following. He has great coverage of Tennessee baseball, and he'll be on the road again in Nashville against Vanderbilt this weekend. So that is going to be very, very telling. All right. I love and I also hate those buzzer beaters, the trauma, but oh, the pain when you are on the other side of it. That's what happened in some of these games already in this tournament. And you needed X, Y, and Z to happen, but that happened, regardless. Stat Heroes, NCAA single game pick'ems, pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid fantasy type of sports gambling. Take control back from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players that you know the best in the gameplay that doesn't rely on those big spreads, those funky odds, long odds, and props. A Stat Hero gives you the advantage, resulting in their games winning 4 times as often. Why? Well, because Stat Hero hates the mystery around who or what you're going up against. In addition to their pick'ems, they also have dozens of lineups that you can comb through and take on in head-to-head. They simply post the sets of players for you to take on with the sets of players that you choose. It's the easiest and fastest way to get your sport fix. So right now, go to stathero.com/locked-on. Use that promo code for a 100% deposit match. stathero.com/locked-on. Use promo code locked-on for a 100% deposit match. Terms and conditions do apply. We'll go back into your Monday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Don't forget, Twitter Tuesday is coming up tomorrow. @_Kaner on Twitter, @Locked On Vols. Get me in any questions, comments, concerns. A lot going on around Tennessee baseball, Tennessee basketball, Tennessee football's in spring practice. You can take over the show We'll go through as many as you guys want to send. That's _Caner and at Locked On. I already got one good, really, really good submission Twitter Tuesday, and I can't wait to bring it to the show tomorrow. So Tennessee football is 3 practices in. Just put on the shoulder pads, had shoulder pads and helmets on Saturday. Day 3 is in the books. Practice number 4 will happen this morning, Monday morning. And then there'll be practice on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of this week. They will scrimmage on Saturday. Pro day will be happening, I believe, on Wednesday. So there's a lot to look forward to this week. And there's going to be 10 former University of Tennessee Volunteers that will go through the pro day. I'll get that list to you guys for sure. And hopefully we'll get some results. But you have the 4 combine guys. You'll have Bayless. You'll have Matthew Butler. You'll have Alontae Taylor. And, of course, you'll have Cade Mays. Theo Jackson will be in that group as well. So that's 5. Then I think you'll have Caleb Tremblay, Jaquan Blakely. I think you'll have a walk-on, and then I think there might be a couple other ones that will take part in Tennessee's pro day. So we'll try to bring as many results onto the show as we possibly can, but that's coming up on Wednesday as well. But on Saturday, Tennessee football wrapped up practice number 3 of the spring session, and it was a zoo on campus. It really was. You had about 70 student athlete, or excuse me, you had about 70 prospects that were on campus. I was trying to say something else. I couldn't get it out. Imagine that. And their families and all that. So taking in spring practice, taking tours of the facility, kind of like a big junior day, essentially, is what it was. And Tennessee continues to make headway with a lot of good players. The number 1 player who will be the number 1 player for the class of 2026, Tyler Atkinson, and he was on campus, picked up his official offer from Tennessee. You had Brandon Strozier, a nice, talented cornerback from from St. Francis, Georgia, Alpharetta, Georgia. And he was on campus along with a couple of his teammates and former NFL running back Brandon Jacobs. Tennessee continues to trend very, very well there. You had some other interesting prospects on campus that, we're taking in, seeing what the coaches were like out there practicing and how they were coaching things up and all that. So it was a good day overall. We got plenty of coverage. We'll have plenty already there at VolQuest.com and plenty more to come from Saturday's festivities. But offensive coordinator Alex Golesh spoke to the media after practice, and I wanted to pull 3 clips and talk about them. Some interesting stuff there from Alex Golesh. The first one I want to play is about having Hendon Hooker back, the return of Hendon Hooker and how much it's different going into spring practice this year compared to last year going into spring practice, last year going into the camp-like setting when you didn't know who your quarterback was going to be. And then later on, he speaks on the dynamic of Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton and how it's a little bit different this year. Give this a listen. This is offensive coordinator Alex Golesh speaking after practice on Saturday.
Makes it a lot easier. You're rotating less. And you're being less political about it. So there's less meetings with me and Joey. We last year would have meetings daily on the rotation and what plays you can run with certain guys, and it was like a wordle. I think that's what's big right now. Trying to figure it out. It's certainly easier right now knowing who the 1 is, who the 2 is. But I'll say Joe has made monumental strides too. Joe has gotten his body right. He's really put a ton into it. So having a healthy and all-in Joe Milton also helps because it helps Hendon. And the competition between those 2 is really, really fun. So those 2 guys, I mean, you talk about pros, they coach each other harder than anybody else. And so just having those 2 guys bringing Hendon along and Gaston and Navy and that crew, that room is really fun right now. A year ago, it was like those guys are competing, and you could say they're competing and really helping each other. I don't know that it was necessarily that way. So just having Hendon, he knows he's a leader. Those guys look to him as a leader. He's got to continue to grow as a leader too, but it's made it much easier.
Couple of things I picked up on from that quote. It's been less political, less rotation, the word wordle. So some interesting stuff there, but it's a really good dynamic when you have 2 veteran quarterbacks who have the same and similar skill sets, who coach each other up and who can use each other as resources. That screams National Football League to me. I'm not saying either one of these quarterbacks will move on and play and start games in the National Football League. I'm not saying they won't, but I'm just saying that's the type of dynamic that you need to succeed. And you see that a lot of times in the National Football League because the backup quarterback's a pro. I mean, he could be a 10-year veteran that's just a career backup quarterback. It's not always a young rookie quarterback. And so having a guy that's been around the block, that's seen a lot of stuff, that's Joe Milton. I mean, he started games here at Tennessee. He started games at Michigan. And that dynamic with him and Hendon Hooker, I think, is a really, really good thing. Even if it wasn't, though, it's not like Golish would come out and tell us that, right? One more or a couple more. Let's move to the offensive line. I've spoke about the tackle situation and how they're trying to figure out if Gerald Mincey can play this spring, and that'll bode well moving forward into fall camp. Also, another guy that's in that conversation is J.J. Crawford. He's been here for a little over a year from junior college. And, of course, the variable is Darnell Wright, because you can play him on either side. Here's Alex Golesh speaking on Darnell Wright, moving him back to the right side for spring practice right now, and how the other tackles are needing to step up and fighting for a spot, that being Dane Davis, who Golesh will mention in a minute, might be able to help out in other spots, J.J. Crawford and Gerald Mincey.
Yeah, we've played a lot with Darnell playing at right. That's kind of his natural home. That's where he's kind of always wanted to be. Played a lot with him and really messing with the left tackle spot. And that's kind of natural, too, for JJ. We've moved Dane around a bunch. I think Dane can help us inside some as well. So that's a daily conversation piece. Is that guy here? When is Gerald Mincey going to grasp it fast enough to actually be able to compete? And Gerald has made strides too, but we need JJ and Gerald and Dane to all take a huge step. And that's not saying Darnell doesn't need to take a step. Darnell just has a bunch of experience now. He's confident. He is the easiest one to move back to his kind of natural home and allow us to get those guys to compete at the left tackle spot. And it may end up being that Darnell moves back and we end up over there. But I'd say Mintz and JJ continue to grow. JJ's got a leg up. And we were hoping JJ coming in a year ago from junior college that he would be ready to go. He had a spring season under his belt. But he got here end of July, like bullets flying. He really didn't have a chance. So now JJ with an offseason, JJ with a strength offseason, a nutrition offseason. He seems to be really confident right now too. But at the same time, bringing Gerald along to where he can have a chance to compete as well. But I think we'll get there by practice 15. Right now, it's super, super early.
Regardless, I think Tennessee is still 100% trying to bring in Tyler Steen from Vanderbilt. He's a left tackle, started many, many games. Tennessee would take him without a doubt if Steen were to choose to come here. So Tennessee probably still in the market for an offensive tackle. But if those guys can step up and you can feel good about finding one other tackle to pair with Darnell Wright heading into fall camp, then of course you need depth, but then it might lessen the load a little bit. And I'm trying to just, looking to take somebody from the portal if maybe Steen chooses to go elsewhere. So I found that interesting. One other clip on one of the poll. This is Alex Golesh speaking on freshman running back Justin Williams-Thomas, who was formerly known as Justin Williams, but he is Justin Williams-Thomas. And then really the running back group as a whole mentions Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, Laneith Whitehead, all those guys. Here's Alex Golesh on the running backs.
I think both for Justin. Justin, again, has been here now for 2 months. He's still figuring out how we're playing. There's a lot of things going on back there, and there's not a lot of time to think about it. So just reps, different than playing wide out. You're in a box, and there's just bodies everywhere. So for him, his 3 days have been like touch and go. He's still trying to figure it all out. But for him, if he can show the ability that he can protect the quarterback beyond running the football. Can you protect the quarterback before we'll ever hand you the ball? Because that's the one spot that, as a young guy at running back, that you'll screw it up really, really fast. So if he can protect the quarterback, his skill set is awesome. He's already big. He's already strong. He's got great vision. He's a good running back. The protection side of it is what's got to come for him, for any young running back, but specifically for him right now, it's kind of swimming. Similar to the quarterbacks, like just really healthy right now, which is really good. It's the same deal for us there. We got to find the rotation because of our tempo, because of how we play. You really got to have 4 guys that are ready to go. That was so huge for Justin to get here early. Laneith looks like a different player. He's finally healthy. Jalen Wright is healthy. Like Jalen Wright in year 2 should make monumental gains. So for us, we still waiting on one to get here in Dylan, but they have taken a huge step. Again, same coach, same system, and then getting healthy. You should see a huge jump there. In terms of what the rotation looks like, I think those guys know there's a bunch of open jobs there. They're fighting like crazy to get in the rotation.
Plenty of coverage all spring practice long. That's at volquest.com. We've got highlights. We got video of player availabilities from coaches and players. I write practice observations immediately after every single practice, what we saw, if anything stood out, who was there, who was not there. Brew McCoy should be on campus taking in practice today, and I believe he might leave sometime tomorrow, but that's a wide receiver Tennessee would like to bring in. Tennessee needs help at wide receiver, got to find some guys, and Brew McCoy is the guy that Tennessee would likely take immediately. He's expected to be on campus later this morning to take in spring practice. So all that coverage, all at volquest.com. Coming up, a player has reportedly entered the transfer portal on the basketball team. We'll tell you who and what that might look like when Locked On Vols returns. But right now, it's Built Bar. We are in the month of March, about to be in the month of April. If you haven't tried those new Puff Bars, I encourage you to go ahead and try that immediately. It's covered in 100% chocolate. It tastes so good. It's marshmallowy, it's cinnamony, it's churro-y, but it can become your new favorite Built Bar. It really can. They've got all different types of flavors as well that you can choose from. And again, like I said, it's covered in 100% chocolate. Yes, that is 100% chocolate. It rivals a candy bar. It tastes like a candy bar, but it's a lot better for you. It's not a candy bar. It's got tons of protein, about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugars, only 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein, though. And you compare that to the normal candy bar, that's sitting somewhere around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Mint brownie, coconut almond. The new month is white. The new flavor this month is the white chocolate cookie. They're all delicious. They're all flavorful, and they're available all at Built.com. Go to Built.com. While you're there, use the promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. Promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That is at Built.com. We got a final segment left here on Locked On Vols, your Monday edition. You can find this podcast whenever you'd like at _Caner on Twitter and at Locked On Vols. Don't forget, Twitter Tuesday coming up tomorrow. Whatever you guys have, please submit those via the DMs. You can reply. You can tweet me, whatever you guys got. Whichever handle you want, at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. All right, so Sunday evening, we had a report come out from Travis Brenham. He is the national basketball analyst for 24/7 Sports. His tweet, Tennessee guard Victor Bailey Jr. has entered the transfer portal, sources tells, at 247 Sports Portal. He lists that he will be a grad transfer. So no reason to dispute that report. At the time of this recording, I have not seen it anywhere else, but again, no reason to dispute the report. It's a very believable report. So if that is indeed the case, what's this kind of look like? Well, Victor Bailey Jr., he has been at Tennessee since, I want to know, since the 2019-2020 season. So I think he got in kind of a little earlier than that, but nonetheless, he played 2 years at Oregon and did a really nice job. He led the Pac-12 in free throw percentage at 80%. As a true freshman back in 2017, 2018, he was a really good 3-point shooter. He had 11 points in the second round NIT game against Marquette back in the postseason of 2018. As a sophomore for Oregon, he played in 37 games. He was the 5th leading scorer at 7.4 points per game, but the most accurate 3-point shooter at just under 40%. And again, a great free throw shooter at 91%. He ranked 9th in the Pac-12 as a sophomore he ranked 9th in the Pac-12 in a 3-point shooting percentage, and he looked really good doing it. Came over to Tennessee, had to sit out a year, of course, tried to find that role, and found a role as a redshirt junior the 2020-2021 season, being a key contributor for Tennessee. He had 12 starts that year. This past year, 2021-2022, he started at a handful of games, but ultimately you saw his minutes really decrease, really move down. And I mean, he was at points in times, he was, the 9th overall guy, sometimes the 10th overall guy, but, was always a good teammate. He was an older guy. Rick Barnes trusts the heck out of him. He truly did. He played a lot again in the game against Texas, had a breakout game late in the SEC schedule against, I want to say it was Georgia. I can't really remember, but nonetheless, Victor Bailey Jr., his role kind of diminished big time for Tennessee moving forward in this season. So he's an older guy. He's a graduate now and appears he will enter the transfer portal, or he has entered the transfer portal, and he will look elsewhere. What's that mean for Tennessee if that is indeed the case? Well, not a whole lot, because again, like I said, his minutes truly did decrease in a big way this season. Justin Powell's another guy that's kind of been rumored to maybe want to enter the transfer portal, but I'm not going to believe that because he has already entered the transfer portal once and transferred, and he is just a sophomore right now. That means he would most definitely have to sit out at least one more year until he graduates. So it looks like Justin Powell's in good shape with Tennessee right now. Victor Bailey would be moving on. It doesn't change an awful lot because both of those guys are three-point shooters. Both of those guys lack a defensive presence. Both of those guys, was playing just a couple minutes per game. So it's really not the end of the world, but good teammate, good leader, a guy that Rick Barnes truly, truly cares about. You wish the best for Victor Bailey Jr. if he has indeed entered the transfer portal as he moves on. But what's that lead the rest of the roster? Well, there's questions surrounding Brandon Huntley Hatfield. It appears that he's in some good shape, but that one might be worth watching out for over the offseason. I just mentioned Justin Powell. It's a guy that I think Tennessee is in good shape with and is enjoying his role, and probably not enjoying his role, but enjoying being a part of this culture and this program for Tennessee. So that one looks to be in some pretty decent shape. Kennedy Chandler, of course, is likely. I mean, I would not expect him back at Tennessee whatsoever. Likely going to the NBA draft, so that wouldn't be a shocker there. Anything's possible, but I'm expecting him to go to the NBA draft. Josiah Jordan-James, I would expect him to go and test the waters, go through the combine stuff, but I think that he would not be graded as a first-round guy, so he would probably want to come back and try to increase his stock. And then there's always the threat that Santiago Vescovi could do the same thing that those other guys are doing, test the waters in the NBA, but he might, have an opportunity to go make some money and play overseas. So that's always a threat. But if I was saying right now, I would say Kennedy Chandler is not going to be back on this team, expected. And Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi would be back on this team next year. You bring in B.J. Edwards, potentially you bring in a couple other guys, and this team is filled with veterans. This team is filled with a good dynamic, good culture, and there's no reason to believe that this team shouldn't contend for an SEC championship and, to go far in the NCAA tournament. But losing Kennedy Chandler would be huge. I mean, there's some people in this market that are acting like Tennessee could have its best team ever, coming back for Rick Barnes. And I think it'll be talented, but you can't tell me that losing a first-round draft pick in Kennedy Chandler and you're going to be better next year. I don't get that. I don't get that whatsoever. So long off season, we'll have to wait and see what happens, but that's kind of a lay of the land of the roster right now for Tennessee basketball up to my knowledge a little bit. But Victor Bailey Jr. has reportedly entered the transfer portal. That is per Travis Brenham, a basketball analyst for 24/7 Sports. If that is the case, best of luck to Victor in finding his new home and his final season, taking advantage of that COVID year. He did not go through senior day festivities for Tennessee, so he would be taking advantage of that COVID year elsewhere. So we'll have to see exactly what happens. All right, that'll do it here for this Monday edition of Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys. Make Locked On NFL Draft your next listen, your second listen. Ryan Clark, you've got Eric Crocker. That is Ryan Tracy, rather. Ryan Tracy and Eric Crocker doing this all by memory right now. They bring the NFL draft to life every single day, tell you all about the top prospects in the college game, as well as the NFL front offices. Make Locked On NFL Draft your second listen behind your first listen, which is Locked On Vols. Twitter Tuesdays tomorrow, guys. Please get me in your questions, your comments, and your concerns. It's a new week. Let's get it. Appreciate you guys for listening, as always, right here on Locked On Vols.